Welcome to Lead with Kindness, your essential podcast for disrupting the workplace with kindness and well-being. I'm Helen Rimmer, and I'm armed with 20 years of leadership experience and a passion for positive psychology. I'm here to offer practical tips and share inspiring stories to revolutionise leadership. Ready to challenge the norm? Let's dive in and transform our workplaces together. It's time to make a difference. Let's get started. Welcome to Lead with Kindness, the podcast where we explore the power of compassionate leadership in today's world. I'm your host, Helen Rimmer, and today we have a truly inspiring guest with us, Steph Tranter, a visionary leadership coach and consultant who left a successful corporate career in retail to help leaders and individuals at crossroads in their careers. Steph's unique blend of corporate experience and psychological insights has transformed many lives. She's also the author of the amazing Leap, How to be more you and find a career you love. Join us as we delve into Steph's journey, her approach to coaching, and the invaluable lessons from her book. Hi, Steph. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Goodness, what an intro. Thanks, Helen.
That's all right.
I'm not sure if I can live up to that, but I'll do my very best. But it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Just briefly then, I describe myself as sort of having three things that I do. Hybrid executive coach, which I know we're going to dig into a bit. Facilitator, so I facilitate a lot of team events, CEOs and their SLTs, and those kind of groups. And a leadership consultant. So I do help design and develop and deliver sort of leadership programs. I'm doing quite a lot of women in leadership programs actually at the moment, which has been brilliant. So those are sort of three areas that I work on. As you said, also an author, clearly not a very easy title to.
No, I got confused.
Probably that last year, really proud of that, and really delighted to be able to come and talk to you about it. Actually, it's one of the things I'm most proud of. So I've been freelance working for myself for about 13 years, and so doing what I'm doing now for that length of time. Hopefully we're going to talk a bit about this. I think we will, because I know it's been quite an important thing for you too. I'm very strengths based. That's an approach that I take, and I've been really lucky actually. I was reflecting on the last 13 years. I've probably now worked across every single sector, from big global corporates like WeWork, Harrods, Carlsberg, Britvic, to charities and the public sector. So charities like the Alzheimer's Society, public sector like the NHS, the police, universities, and then smaller tech firms or startups. And in the last few years, been really lucky to work quite a bit in sport. So I've worked with several sporting organisations, but also an Olympic team, the British Equestrian Olympic team, and some people from the Paralympic teams. So it's been a real. When I reflect back, I go, wow, God, I've been able to do all of that, and it's been such a joy. And I know you and I were chatting before we hit record about just the joy of working for yourself, and I feel really lucky to have been able to work with so many different organisations. And I guess before that, just to begin the journey, I spent most of my career, you talked about that kind of corporate experience, started at Tesco, was there for about 11 years and started on the checkouts, just funding my way through university, and then just made my career at Tesco, made my part-time Saturday checkout job at Tesco, turned it into a kind of full-time career and worked my way up the ranks, I suppose, ending in the group leadership academy at Tesco, which was kind of the last role I was in. So hopefully that gives you, I don't know if that's too much, but that gives you a bit of an overview of me and where I'm at the moment.
It's inspirational. Should say I met Steph last year when she introduced me to StrengthScope. So that did my StrengthScope, and also Leap was really helpful while I was deciding what I was going to do. And so highly recommend that.
You're both StrengthScope groupies, aren't we? I think.
We are. Yeah. I love it. So let's get into some questions. So your journey from a corporate career in retail to becoming a leadership coach is fascinating. We've always had a bit of a taste in that. What was that pivotal moment that made you take that leap?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this, I don't know if it, and I don't think if it ever is for everybody, I don't think it's ever just one moment for me. I was kind of reflecting on thinking it was a build-up of moments and a build-up of insights. So, even at the beginning of my career at Tesco, I always knew I wasn't really a corporate person. How I ended up staying there for 11 years, I don't know. But I think I do know it was a sensible bill paying job. It was the sensible route. I needed to fund my life. I had no one else funding my life for me, so I had to carve that. And that was, but I always knew, and I always was exploring. I've got a bit of an arty background, and I was always exploring how do I run my own business, but I wasn't quite sure how to do it. So you get sort of sucked in to it's the corporate world, and it did me well. I learned a lot. But I think 11 years in, I was getting a bit tired of it. I was very fortunate. I got a lot of training. Tesco, for all its sins and all the things people don't like it for, was massively ahead of its time when it comes to personal development, leadership development. And it was such a privilege to be in that team, learning what the stuff I do now. We were being taught that way back then, like 14, 15 years ago, and we introduced StrengthScope into Tesco 14 years ago, about a year into it being established. So Strength are going to be going a year, and then we introduced it into Tesco. So, so it was so ahead of, I was so grateful. I know I've sort of gone off piece a little bit, but this is kind of where I got to. And I was like, do you know what? I love all of this. I've learned it all, but corporate life just isn't for me. And also I couldn't see where I could take my career. I didn't want to go up. Didn't like the idea of being a manager. Didn't want to do that. I realized I loved this stuff around coaching, leadership development, and I wanted to specialize more in that. And I think it was a long time in coming, because I've got a strategic mindedness strength, you see. So I put myself a little bit of a strategy around it, and I talked to other leadership consultants because I was in that world, because we were recruiting people in for these programs, and I was finding out about their worlds, and I was going, God, I think I could do that, and finding out how they did it and getting all the information. And so I suppose it was that build up of stuff. And funnily enough, I think if I could pinpoint one moment, it would be my conversation with Dr. Paul Brereton, who's the creator of StrengthScope, because he did my StrengthScope debrief at Tesco. And at that point, how lucky was I there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Who did it. But I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it made me realize I've got strengths and qualities that are natural to me that are transferable into other areas. And talking about strategic mindedness, no one at Tesco had ever really spotted that or recognized that. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh God, I'm so proud that that's come up. And I realized actually that's how I can use that to help me start my business and set out. So there was something, all these different things feeding into a moment. That probably was a moment that boosted my confidence. I went, oh, hang on a sec. I stop focusing on all the things I haven't got, all the things I'm rubbish at. Or I didn't have a lot of money behind me either, by the way. I didn't.
I get that.
And I was actually quite poorly as well. And that's probably one of the other things. I think being in corporate world had compounded some digestive issues I was having. And it got to the point where I was like, I need to hit the pause button a little bit. So there's almost all these things compounding that made me go, it's got to be more to life than this. I've got to do something here. So a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that kind of gives a bit of flavour for what brought the leap about, I suppose.
And it's interesting that StrengthScope conversation, because it was definitely part of my journey as well, just making me think. So I have been lucky enough to have a coaching session with you, but you describe your coaching style as combining corporate experience and therapeutic insights. Can you elaborate on how this hybrid approach benefits your clients?
Yeah, that's a massive question. And I probably need to break it down a bit. So I suppose the corporate stuff, I'd say for me, I'm very practical. So whilst everything, and then we'll talk about this later as well, whilst I'm really a big believer in the things that I do are very much backed in science and theoretical. I try not to be theoretical. So my experience in corporate life helped me really have that practical side, combined with, I think, just a natural tendency of how is this going to work in practice? How can I really help you? So you've got that side of it. And then what I do then with the coaching, what I realized over the years of doing it was I really started to see that you can't help someone with a work issue unless you look at their whole person, because everything is so interconnected and interrelated. And so I sort of was naturally having deeper conversations with people anyway, I think, because I was really interested in emotions, how they worked. I personally sort of suffered quite a lot with anxiety, and I'm a very emotional person. So I did my own personal journey into, hang on a sec, right, I need to figure out how I be me, but manage these emotions that are getting in the way of some things, but I don't, so I wanted to learn myself. And I suppose I got really interested in other people then as well. And I was sharing some of the things that I was doing for myself with other people and seeing that they were working. So there was this, so I think what happens then is that my approach looks at the whole person when I'm talking to someone, and I'll explain that to them and say, look, I do combine the sort of the best of all the worlds, really, from coaching, therapy, and probably physical health, right? There is such a massive link between our physical well-being and our emotional well-being, and somehow the two are not meeting up. And we could go on about this for but it's slightly off the question. But we talk about mental health. I actually believe it's emotional health. It's not mental health, because it's not just about what's in your mind, right? It's everything. So for me, it's just a whole philosophy of, I suppose, of systems, and everything's connected. You can't help them. And how it helps people, I suppose, is that when they're presenting me with symptoms, or they're saying to me, this is going on at work, it's quite often those symptoms are presenting because of something that's happening at home. And if you don't explore that whole life, so for instance, I've just taken on a new client who's new to an SLT. He's quite young. He's saying, actually, what I need some help with is, I'm now managing people who are my peers, and I'm not quite sure how to influence these people who are more senior to me, more experienced. I'm quite young, but also now I'm amongst all these SLT members, and I feel inexperienced and unconfident, and so I feel really stuck in how to do it. And so we're talking a bit about that, but then I dug a little bit more, and we find out actually he's got quite a lot going on in his personal life. Dig a little bit more, he's not sleeping very well. Dig a little bit more, he's actually recently had a bereavement. Dig a little bit more, and actually he's really close to burnout. So the thing is, these surfacing, if we just stuck with what's going on at work, we wouldn't get to the root cause, and we wouldn't be dealing with the right issues. And so actually, before we even get to some of that stuff about influencing, which may or may, we may need to address that, but we've got to start further down the chain at the root cause, and manage his energy, help him get back to feeling well again, help him deal with that before we start with that. But if I just come in and go, oh, well, let me give you some influencing techniques, then it's not going to solve it. So there's lots of cases like that. So another example is a leader in a big FMCG company sort of came and said, I'm really worried because I seem to have lost my confidence. I'm not very confident. And he was describing the symptoms. He said, tell me the symptoms. This is less about home, but more about how the hybrid approach of coaching and therapy and understanding more about emotions works. So he was talking about, I don't feel very confident. Tell me, I'm very person-centered. So if someone says confident, I'll kind of go, well, tell me about what you mean by that, right? Tell me about what symptoms you're seeing. Tell me about how you know you don't feel confident. And the symptoms he was describing, a lot of it is kind of racing thoughts. A lot of it was racing heartbeat. A lot of it was picking up his laptop late at night to do work. And I said, do you know what? That sounds more like anxiety, not confidence, because actually he all the other things I'd learned about him, he's really backs himself. He really knows his stuff. He's really great at work. And he went, oh, you know what? Just that reflection. He went, you're probably right. He had a bit of a light bulb moment, because he said, do you know, I've just, a couple of years ago, I had a really bad boss who bullied me. And I think that had a massive impact on me. So he's now on high alert from this previous experience. And actually, so we need to treat that, rather than a confidence issue. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of unpicking, so you get to the root cause and the real issue. And I think you can't do that if you don't take a holistic approach and ask about everything. So I don't know, does that answer your question? Does that help?
Absolutely. And it really goes nicely into the next one, which is how many newly promoted leaders struggle with imposter syndrome. And how do you help your clients overcome this challenge? You've slightly answered the confidence and things, but
well, again, I suppose with them, it is a massive thing, and it's a label. Blooming hate labels, right? I hate them, but they're a way that helps people communicate simply. It's it's what we do. And it does help in that respect. So I guess in terms of imposter syndrome, I tend to first of all ask, what do you mean? Tell me about, what does that look like? So I kind of realize there's a label and I'll go, right, what does imposter syndrome look like? What situations you're talking about? What does it feel like? And I'd also will start encouraging or talk to them about the unhelpfulness of labels. There's another label like people pleaser, and how unhelpful that kind of is, because it takes this generalized sweep over everything, and assumes you're like that all the time, and it can limit you in terms of your behaviors. Well, I'm a people pleaser, so that means I just have to put up with the fact that sometimes I'm taken advantage of, or I don't say no, and that's just something that's not in my control. It's almost like it takes your control out of it. So there's a bit about that. And then when you look at the term imposter, right, you think about what you're subliminally telling yourself. Imposter, the definition of imposter is you are deliberately deceiving people around your abilities. So you're telling yourself, I'm deliberately deceiving people that I shouldn't be here. I mean, what sort of message internally are you sending yourself? So I have to have a whole passionate conversation about that first. But usually when you unpick it, the themes, whilst everyone's individual, the themes tend to be, I'm here and I don't feel credible enough, experienced enough, qualified enough, good enough. That tends to be at the bottom of all of that. And I think what causes that, let's come back to strength scope and strengths, right? What causes it is where their focus has been and where they've placed value. So generally their focus has been on all the things they crap at, all their weaknesses, all the things they don't have, rather than really understanding and appreciating what they, like I was saying earlier about what helped me leap from Tesco to freelance life, is realizing I've got these transferable natural strengths that come naturally to me, that energize me, that I don't have to do anything other than just allow out, and it enables me to do the things I need to do. So I think, but in terms of how you help people, with how I have found a good way to help people is introduce them to that concept, take them through strength scope, help them understand their strengths, help them see how their strengths have helped them to get to where they are, and how they can transfer over. And there was another point. Oh, and also helping to try to break this myth that we have to value knowledge and experience over our natural strengths, because I think that's what causes a lot of imposter syndrome. That person knows more than me, they've got more experience than me, they're more qualified than me, and it's almost kind of saying that doesn't mean they can bring more than you can, or they can bring what you or can bring what you can bring, because you've got all these different strengths that can help you see things or ask different questions to what they ask. So I think that's generally I've got an example if that helps, but if you want to move on to another question, we can.
Well, why not give us an example, and then
but it probably does relate to some of the things, and I think and it's a very very quick one, but just it's such a lovely example, because I was working with a sales director who came across as really confident. Sales directors tend to be quite confident, but he came to me for coaching. He was directed to me from an HR director because he had high potential, but something was holding him back. And through chatting to him and doing strength scope, we realized he'd got a lot of strengths in the relational section. So loads of stuff about developing people, empathy, leading, relationship building, compassion, like everything, like totally, so emotionally intelligent, so socially intelligent. But all the people who were around him in the senior roles were academics and very thinkers. And so he was saying, and actually, you look at the whole person, he was telling me stories from his school time when he felt stupid because he didn't do very well academically at school. So he's got this story his whole life that I'm not clever enough. And he gets into this situation surrounded by academically clever people. He's got this story that he's telling himself that he's not clever enough. All these other people are academically clever. And so that's what's holding him back, basically, that he feels like his strengths aren't valued or valuable. And actually through our coaching, he realized actually he's got some strengths that make him a really brilliant leader. And he just needed to understand that was his unique strengths, and it was really helping. And it helped him, I suppose it helped him push against the culture that was there, and know that even though he was different to the culture that was there, or the others that were in those roles, that was okay. So he went on and got promoted in that organization, did a really good job, and had so much confidence, gave back to that organization, but realized actually he'd been there a really, really long time, given a lot to that organization, and he wanted to go and try somewhere else. So the whole confidence in him being able to do that. And now every time I check in with him, he's gone to 2 or 3 different places, but he's getting clearer and clearer and more confident in, the sort of companies, sort of roles, the sort of, he knows he's a completely different person in terms of believing in his ability. So for me, that was a really nice story, and a really nice one that sustained over time, because he had this shift in recognizing where his core strengths and energies are.
Yeah, that really shows that power of the strengths, of understanding your strengths, of having that language as well around it, isn't it? It's that.
For me, it's not a one-off, right? It's not just something that helped him there and then. It helped him there and then. The company benefited, he benefited, but then it honestly, it is just I think I don't know how long it is, maybe 6-7 years. Every time I check in with him, it's just this person who's flying and so confident in who he is. It's wonderful to see. It's just so sustainable.
It's brilliant, isn't it? So you mentioned then an HR director had referred him to you, and they often do. What are common issues that these leaders face, and how do you address them?
So I think it's quite a similar answer, actually. So I think it's, you've got the imposter syndrome, you've got the not feeling credible enough, the whole confidence in their own strengths. I think influencing peers and boss, that comes up quite a bit. I think managing uncertainty and change comes up quite a bit. There's quite a lot of organizational change. There's quite a lot of people who do get promoted and then have to manage their peers, get promoted. So I think that comes up quite a bit. And quite a lot. It is this, that person I was telling you about, it is people who are like, we've got this really high potential, but something's holding them back. How do we help them? And quite often, which kind of takes a nice link into Leap, I'm finding a lot of issues come because people are at this crossroads in their career. And I think that they may not realize they're at the crossroads in their career, but you you dig a little bit deeper around the behaviors they're displaying or why they've come to me or been referred to me, because they've been spotted as someone who's got something, but something's kind of amiss, and how do you unpick it? So I guess, again, it comes in short, and not to kind of repeat what we've already said, I suppose it's taking an individual approach of each person and really understanding what's the core issue and reason. And generally, more often than not, because I don't think we have this education at school, I think it's better now, but we don't have that education, and no one really helps you unless you're really lucky enough to go on like a leadership program or something like that, to really kind of go, who am I? What's uniquely great about me? What are my values? What's me at my best? What is it that I really want? What is it that's important to me? How do I get really, for loads of different reasons, people somehow just don't have that time and attention focused on who am I and what am I about and what do I want? So more often than not, we'll start there with all of those issues, really. So the one, I can understand them better, and 2, they can understand themselves better. And then we've got this bigger picture of right, okay, so let's come back to, let's go big. Now let's come in and go, right, where are we then in the context of your life right now in terms of what we do? So I know that wasn't quite specific, but I think that's where I start,
That's really good. And before we get into Lee, you also work, we've talked about quite a lot of corporate stuff, but you also work with some small business owners, startups, entrepreneurs. What challenges do they bring to you?
Well, you could probably list some of these, Helen. Just in early days in your world. So some of these might resonate with you. So all of the above that I just said, right? I don't, I think there are some universal issues that I see across industry, country, culture, type of business. A lot. It's so much often, surprisingly so much often, that comes down to confidence, and or anxiety. Actually, interesting. But so some very, very specific issues that come up tend to be around how do I get clients? I'm just starting out. I don't get clients.
Yeah.
How do I sell? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have to sell, or I don't like selling, or there's this big kind of thing around, oh my
Yeah.
God, I want to work for myself, but how do I do that? Sometimes if it's more established, it can be, you know, how do I manage the workload? I didn't get into a bit like you and I were chatting earlier on. I didn't get into being self-employed to be working all the time, and now I'm overloaded and I don't know how to deal with that. And quite often, you know, it can still be that question of how do I do more work I love, coming back to the reasons why I'm self-employed, because you know what happens when you get self-employed, you do end up doing a mix of stuff that pays the bills and might not be totally what you love, but you're trying to do the stuff you love. So it's almost like, how do I get that kind of right mix? So I suppose those are probably some very specific things to, and I suppose it depends if you're individual or if you're an MD of a small business, you know. So I know I've helped quite, you know, some of the issues that come up with MDs of small businesses, you know, when there might 5 or 6 people or maybe 10, 15 people, it can be a little bit about, you know, how do I step away now? How do I set up the team so that I've set up this business? I love the business. I've set it up because I want it to be a great place for people to work, and I love what I do. But how do I step away now and let that run? So again, I can come back to this, why I did this in the first place, you know, that kind of quality of life of enjoying life. So there's a few themes, isn't there, actually?
A lot there around balance, isn't there? That sort of balancing. And I think something as a small business owner I'm finding is, as much as there's stuff I love and that's coming, there's stuff that pays the bill and some of it overlaps, but making sure I don't spend so much time on the stuff I love that I'm stressed because I haven't got the money. And that's the juggle, isn't it? It's all
absolutely. And the juggle around, I think, you know, the hardest thing to deal with running your own business is probably dealing with the uncertainty of its work coming in, because it feels certain and secure when you're employed, although arguably I think it's less secure these days.
Definitely.
But yeah, so I think how do you deal with not a regular income, you know, it's just a different way of managing your money and understanding how to do that. So I think that comes up quite a bit as well. I always think about that in terms of, would I rather the problem of uncertainty or the problems being employed? And I always land on, I'd rather uncertainty these days.
Absolutely. I've realised that I've always been a risk taker as well. So actually this suits me, that like living on the edge suits me slightly.
Brilliant. But it's funny because I wouldn't put myself as a natural risk taker. So, you know, I guess it isn't the living on the edge bit I enjoy, but I like the variety and I like freedom. So they're more important to me than maybe stability and certainty. So I think it's about the values, isn't it? What helps you thrive. And I, you know, and different people run businesses differently. So I probably run my business where actually I do lots of work with lots of different people, and I get repeat business, but I don't actually always, I don't base my model on repeat business. I base it on working with lots of different people in different places, because I love that, and I love the variety of that. So it is fascinating.
And it can change as well. Well, your life changes, can't it?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of being self-employed, is you've got more freedom to respond and react. Because actually, when you look at COVID, when COVID hit, I think the people who ran their own businesses, the ones who succeeded and managed their way through that impact, were those who could flex. And were able to flex and were happy to flex. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a great insight, Helen, actually. If I think the 13 years, it hasn't always been the same, and I'm constantly reassessing, you know, is this what I want to be doing? Is this where I want to be going? Is the work flowing? You know, there isn't the certainty of every year is going to be the same, and that comes with its own challenges, but also its own kind of, actually I quite like that.
Quite a lot of freedom there. And things like, actually I haven't got work today, you know, no one's booked in, no clients, and it's a beautiful day, I can go outside and just and things like that. And then
you have permission to do that. It's a really thing, because if you're still in that kind of corporate mindset, I'm really guilty, I can't go out, I can't go do something for me on a middle of a Wednesday at 11 o'clock, you know, I should be doing this, you know. So there's a whole different mindset around how you almost divorce yourself or detach yourself from that that kind of way of working and way of being. So
Yeah.
it tends to be a lot about ourselves and what we allow ourselves to do.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's fascinating. We could talk about this one all day. Maybe we'll do one for small business owners at a later date. So going to your book, it's obviously received some glowing reviews. What motivated you to write it, and how do you hope it will help readers?
Yeah, leaders or readers or both.
Both, I suppose, but readers, yeah.
Yeah, again, it's several factors that motivated me to write it. So I think I've always wanted to write a book, and probably have had several books in me, you know. So that's always been underlying. When I started my business, and you probably had a similar advice, the advice is have products.
Yeah.
You know, make sure you've got a product, make sure you've got a book. And I was like, okay, great, good. But I always also knew if I was going to write a book, it wasn't just any old book. I had a really specific kind of view around what I wanted it to be, which is very different from the other books that you see coming out. And so until I was really clear what it was, how I was going to do it, because there were some challenges around it in terms of you've seen it, you know, it's colourful, it's a book and a workbook, so it's practical, but it's got the scientific insights, it's got all of that in it. But to self-publish that is quite challenging, and I've limited budget. So there was a lot of things going into how do I do this? And I just couldn't get over I need to design it myself, and I need to do it this anyway, a whole load of factors. So it sort of was simmering for quite some time. But I suppose the kind of factors that kind of made it come to fruition probably in the last few years were that I really realized that I'd got this set of tools, techniques, and processes that I was seeing themes that they were the most effective that helped people.
Oh,
and
that's really good.
Really, really clear. And then I but my style is very person-centered. So I'll come in and I won't go, I've got this process, everybody, and we'll go through it. I'll go, what's going on for you? Okay, this tool might help, this tool might help. So I'd never really done that before, but then I tested out a process that was sort of like the book, right? Set out like the book with a group coaching cohort. And I tested it out over a summer, and it worked. And I was like, wow, this is, and that gave me the boost to go, okay, it can work in a book. Then this is a process. So that boosted me to do it, I suppose. So the motivations were definitely, I could see the value in getting it as a business owner. But I wanted to make something really useful and practical. I didn't want to just make any old book. I wanted something to be really helpful. And I guess, you know, my experience is, you know, there's a lot of people out there who could benefit from coaching but can't quite afford it. And so I did want it to be a bit of a business card and credibility for my business, but I also wanted it to have a genuinely helpful use for people that couldn't necessarily get access to some of these things. So I suppose those were... And if I'm honest, I'm a bit of a creator, so I wanted to create something beautiful as well, right? I wanted to create this joyous, beautiful thing.
It is beautiful. It's lovely. And I love the quotes you've got in it and things like that. And you can read it, but you could also, after you've sort of worked your way through it, you can dip into it as well. You can go, oh, there's something, you know, and that's lovely. And even if you've had coaching with you, it would be useful as that like extra thing to take away with you, isn't it? It's almost like
I see it's quite a nice supplement, and thank you for saying that, because absolutely, again, like I said, I was very specific about how I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a book that could be read from start to finish, so there was a process. It was also really important it was written in a way where it wouldn't feel weird to just pick it up and dip in, and you wouldn't feel lost. You'd get something from that. Again, it was that person-centered thing trying to eke its way in the back door almost. You know, if you were going, look, I'm all right on this stuff here, but chapter 4, which is about overcoming, you know, my fears or whatever, that's where I need to focus.
And different people will have different chapters, won't they, where they'll go, I need to go back to that, or I need to
different chapters at different stages in their life, you know. So
it's a great gift as well.
I was on Amazon the other day just checking out the stats, and whilst I did get #1 status long time ago, I actually was looking, and it is number 25 in the most gifted, actually, which is not bad when I've not been doing like pushing. So other people agree this is
I have gifted it to people who have been
thank you.
It's great. So we talked a bit about this, but it does combine science-based insights with practical tools. Can you share a specific example of integrating these elements into your coaching and how that
Yeah, yeah. And actually you'll see it in the book. So, you know, I've picked out kind of 3 areas. I won't necessarily talk about all of them, but I think that the science in terms of positive psychology, so all of the robust stuff that's out there about positive psychology is fundamental to so much of the first chapters around understanding yourself, you know, understanding who you are, what makes you unique, because all the science in positive psychology says actually those people who understand and play to their natural strengths, you know, tend to feel more productive, resilient, creative, motivated. So all of the stuff that's about understanding you and the strengths perspective, that's massively based on the science of positive psychology. But it's really important to stay here. It's not about this kind of toxic positivity, i.e., you know, just you know, saying everything's wonderful and great and brilliant and forgetting the bad stuff. It's not about that, because actually I think I weigh that up quite nicely with the reality of actually we do have crap days and we do have emotions that unhinge us, and but it's about addressing the balance for me, that most of our lives we spent focusing on what we're not and what we're not very good at, and all the rubbish things and all the negative things about us, and it's about addressing the balance for me. And I think that's what that bit's about. And I guess the other areas where the science sort of applies to the tools, or the tool kind of comes off the back of science, tends to be around the stuff around understanding your emotions. So there's I think a lot of the times the things that stop people from living the lives they want tends to be at the root of a fear. And that fear is shown with some of the thoughts that we have. And I think sometimes we're not always taught about actually that you are in control of what you're thinking, and how to understand those thoughts and how those thoughts can affect how you're feeling. And actually, so there's a whole load of stuff around. It's not loads, because that's coming in my next book, funnily enough.
Another book.
But there's a taster of how to understand your emotions and what goes on in your brain to help you understand how you can manage them better. So, you know, it's littered with kind of, this is the science and here's the tool around it. But those are probably some of the more obvious, bigger ones.
So in your opinion, what qualities define a compassionate leader? Obviously my big passion, but very much links with all that positive psychology. Positive psychology underpins all the science of kindness and well-being that I do. So what qualities define a compassionate leader in today's world that's uncertain?
I mean, it's a big question, isn't it? And it's you know, what does compassionate leader mean, and what is all of that? But I suppose if I look at which I think you and I are hugely aligned on, actually. But, you know, I wrote down a few kind of things here in terms of the leaders who I see most effectively leading teams in the world today have all the kind of qualities that you and I have been chatting about, like empathy. They absolutely have ability. It goes back to that example of that person with all those relational strengths who are saying, well, what about, I haven't got strategic mindedness, I haven't got these thinking strengths, which are the traditional strengths that you're supposed to have as a leader. And I chat to so many leaders who go, I haven't got those. What are they going to say? They're going to pick that out, that means I'm not good at my job, I can't do it. And so I think it's some of this is the relational stuff, right? The empathy, the emotional intelligence, understanding yourself, huge self-awareness, and also the ability to understand others, and have that emotional and social intelligence, because life is about people, and businesses and organizations are made up about people. So if actually you don't have that understanding of yourself and of people, how on earth can you lead them effectively and get their emotional loyalty and get them brought into what you want to do? So, but I think coupled with that, I think there is something about also having a self-assuredness, not an arrogance, but a confidence in yourself. And what I mean by that is kind of, it's not necessarily the backing yourself piece, but I think that is important. But I think it's more, I'm comfortable with who I am. So I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm happy not to put a mask on. I'll come and show you who I am. I'm really okay with who I am, but not to the point that I'm arrogant. I'm also curious and willing to learn. So there's this, you know, not asking much, am I, right? No. But this thing about that, you know, if you can be someone who's totally okay with who they are, but curious and open to learn as well from others. You know, I think there's that lovely combination. And I think there's a couple of things like flexibility and creativity. I think there's just this all the stuff that, you know, the great Ken Robinson talks about in terms of managing in our world today. Anybody, not even just not a leader, but I mean, I think this is for anybody, these sort of skills, you know, the things that should be taught in schools, in my opinion, to help people have those skills to navigate through life. Those have probably been my top ones.
Wouldn't it be amazing if we could get it all into education?
Wouldn't it?
That would just be brilliant. So can you share a success story, other than all the ones you've already shared, from your coaching practice that really stands out, that really...
Yeah, I've probably shared quite a lot of the ones that have already stood out, but I'm not sure I've talked all about men, actually. So let's think of it. Let's talk about... There's a couple of ones with women, actually, that have stood out quite a lot, and they're about women who have taken a leap. So it has been that, and there are again themes, but there was this they're all wonderful people that I coach. I love the clients I get. I'm so lucky, the people who come to me. But there was a lady who'd worked in an organization for many years, was very loyal to that organization, given a lot, like a lot of us do, given a lot to it because they love the culture, love the people, love what that organization did. There was a time where her boss's role became open, but they didn't fill the position. So she stood up and did a lot of the stuff in that role. No extra pay, no extra stuff, but she was brilliant at it. She did really well at it. She loved it. She made a difference. There was tangible things that showed that she made a difference. Sadly, they opened it up to be recruited for. She applied, didn't get it. Someone from outside got it. So imagine, you know, she comes to me at this point saying, oh my God, right, I'm broken, I'm battered, I'm kind of, I now just feel really worthless. I feel unrecognized. I feel devalued. I mean, a lot of these words are shared by other people who come to me. You know, they've got to that point where, you know, they've given everything, and I don't understand how this has happened. But then she had to work for a new boss, so she was sort of just reevaluating the whole of her kind of career, going, I'm being really loyal, I'm really good at it, I'm now really sad, and I don't know quite what to do about it. So through a process of, obviously the coaching, I helped to kind of navigate this current situation was in, but at the same time, what that helped her do was take a step back and go, actually, okay, what do I love and what do I want to do? And we were exploring that. And to just cut a longer story short, she then realized actually she wanted to do a lot more sports massage and work for herself, and she'd already done a bit of that. And again, it's a really lovely example of someone who didn't just suddenly go, right, I want to leap and leapt. She built up to it. She'd worked up to it. She needed to build back her confidence and overcome this, feeling so bruised and battered by this whole experience. And during the coaching, we identified what she wanted to do. She started to do some things and started to have a bit of a plan that she was like, well, finances, I can't lead completely now, so I need to, reduce my hours. And she'd made a plan on how to do it. We finished the coaching, she was well into her plan. And then earlier this year, she got in touch with me and said, I'm so excited to tell you, I finally left that job now and I'm full-time sports masseur. And I'm doing all these other things as well, but I've finally done it and I can earn the money and I've built up my clients, and it's just
amazing.
I feel quite emotional talking about it, because where she started in such a position, and it's just so, and I mean, I could tell that story time and time again about people who have got wonderful strengths who somehow got to a point where they've stopped being valued or recognized, or and she took control of it. It was hard, and she was, it was really hard, and she was so angry and upset, but working through that, it's actually led to a really positive place. I'm so proud of what she's done, because it was a strategic move. She planned it. She organised it. She worked towards it. She was sensible about how she managed it, and she got it. It was a wonderful story of it's the reality. Things don't just suddenly happen like that for people. There's a planning. You all know this as well. There's a planning. There's a process. There's a thing that builds up to it. So that probably stands out for me.
It's wonderful, isn't it? And it also shows that power of coaching, and getting the answers in people out there and everything.
It was a lovely combination of helping someone deal with a really difficult situation, build up their confidence, deal with some of the emotions, and then figure out where they wanted to go, and then organize and make it happen. It's almost like it's like my ideal client. It's like everything everything that I love doing to help people.
Yeah. I love that you need those strategies, those goals and the steps towards them as well, because that's something I find with a lot of my clients is that goal setting. They need you've got to break it down. It's not just I want to do, isn't it?
Yeah, they kind of go, that feels so far away and so big over there, I couldn't possibly do it. And they shut the idea down before they've even started. But actually, like you say, if you can kind of go, well, what's the first step towards that? And then what's the next? And then what's the next? And gradually you get momentum. And that big leap doesn't feel as doesn't feel like a leap anymore, right?
No, because it's where you're heading. It's just a journey, isn't it? Yeah. So as we come to the end, what's next for you? And are there any new projects? You mentioned a book, another book, or goals on the horizon that you're excited about?
When I am really excited about this new book, and again, it's been one that's been floating around in my mind for a while. It's going to be a couple of years away, right? But it's called Beyond Labels: The Art and Science of Managing. The art and science of mastering your emotions. So it's basically everything that similar to Leap in the sense that it's all the things that I have found have made the biggest impact and the biggest difference to people when needing to deal with anything to do with their emotions. But it takes that holistic approach. So it isn't just the psychology of emotions, it's the biology of emotions as well, and understanding that massive link. So I've got sort of 6 steps to help you manage your emotions, and it is this absolute, there's so much wonderful research now about even to a cellular level in our biology, the functioning of something called mitochondria, our metabolic function. There's so much research around how our lifestyle choices affect how that operates in our cells that make up all of the organs and all the processes in our body that can affect your emotional state and your emotional health, and so I want to kind of bring a lot of this, all the stuff I'm learning and getting excited about. I want to do a similar thing for that in this book about emotions that I did for kind of career crossroads. So I'm loving it. That's and a lot of it's not new news. There's a great guy called Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who has a podcast, and he's I'm probably a bit of a groupie of his. I learn a lot from his stuff and the researchers and scientists he gets on. And I'm applying that to my coaching practice. There's a great woman called Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who's specialised in women's brain health. So I'm actually quite interested in women leadership programs and women's brain health, because it's such an under-researched area that I think if we're supporting women in organisations and in business and leadership roles, it's really important to be on the money with this research and help them validate some of the things they're experiencing from a scientific perspective around this is why it feels different to men, because fundamentally it is. It's not about women are from men and Mars are men are from Venus. No, what's it? Mars and Venus. All of that.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, wasn't it?
Lisa Mosconi talks about actually it's not that brains are different, but the functions of the brain, because of the hormones and the hormone changes that only women go through at certain times that men will. So it's helping them realize, I guess just validate their experience, right? So anyways, I'm passionate about all of those things at the moment, and putting it together in a stepized kind of way to help me organize my thoughts around it, but also help other people with it.
It sounds brilliant.
That's what's going on. A couple of years away yet, though. But
but I find that because I've just written my book, and it organises everything. It gets you really to really understand and get down deep into what it means.
Definitely. No, I agree. And brilliant news about your book. That's congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
You've done so early on as well.
I'm
smashing through things, Helen. You really are.
I'm just saying yes to everything, basically. That seems to be the gist of it, without burning out. So finally, where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you?
Yes. Website. So you'll be surprised to know it's stephtranter.com. Email steph@stephtranter.com. I'm quite present on LinkedIn, and that's probably the only social media platform I'm on. So that's probably all the best places. And please, if people want to, feel free just to say hello and connect in. And Leap is also on podcasts. So I've also got a podcast channel. So I recorded every single episode on my podcast channel. So if you don't want to go and buy if you like the sound of the book but don't want to buy it and you want a taste of it, you prefer to listen, find it on my podcast as well.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure everyone listening will have really enjoyed that. So yeah, and everyone listening, thank you for listening and joining us. We hope you found today's conversation with Steph as enlightening and inspiring as I did. Remember to check out her book Leap, obviously all links in the show notes and everything. And for practical tools, check it out for practical tools and insights to navigate your own career crossroads. Do stay tuned for more episodes where we can bring you stories and strategies to lead with kindness in every aspect of your life. And like, share and subscribe and everything. And until next time, be kind, be compassionate and lead with love. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Lead with Kindness. I hope today's episode has inspired you and equipped you with practical insights to bring more kindness and well-being into your leadership journey. Remember, the transformation towards a kinder workplace starts with us, and every small step counts. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with fellow leaders, and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more people committed to positive change. I'm Helen Rimmer, and it's been a pleasure to be part of your leadership journey today. Until next time, keep leading with kindness and fostering well-being in all that you do. Goodbye and take care.